All right, let's get real for a second. The Bible is the best-selling book of all time. It's inspired billions of people, shaped history, and given us some of the most famous stories ever told. But let's be honest, it's also got some wild, and I mean wild moments. From talking donkeys to people turning into salt, some of these stories are so strange you'd think they belong in a sci-fi movie instead of a sacred text. Now, don't get me wrong, these strange moments don't make the Bible any less meaningful. In fact, they make it even more fascinating. These stories can teach us lessons, challenge us, or just leave us scratching our heads. So today we're diving into the 15 strangest, weirdest, most head-scratching parts of the Bible. Whether you're religious, curious, or just here for the tea, trust me, you're in for a ride. Let's go. Number 15, the talking donkey, Numbers 22. Let's kick this off with a classic, the talking donkey. Yes, you heard that right. This story comes from the book of Numbers, chapter 22, and it involves a prophet named Balaam. Balaam is on his way to meet a king who wants him to curse the Israelites. As he's riding his donkey, an angel of the Lord appears in the road. But here's the twist. Only the donkey can see the angel. Now this poor donkey is like, no thanks, I'm not going any farther. And it veers off the path. Balaam, of course, has no idea what's going on. So he starts beating the donkey to get it to move. Finally, the donkey talks. It literally says, "What have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times?" Imagine that, a donkey standing up for itself and calling out Balaam. And the wildest part? Balaam doesn't even seem surprised. He just argues back like, this is totally normal. It's not until Balaam's eyes are opened and he sees the angel that he finally gets what's happening. This story is so bizarre, but it also raises some interesting questions. Like, why a donkey? Was this meant to humble Balaam? Or maybe it's a reminder that wisdom can come from unexpected places, even a talking animal. Number 14, Lot's wife turns to salt, Genesis 19. All right, let's move on to one of the most dramatic moments in the Bible. Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt. This happens during the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. God tells Lot and his family to flee the city and not look back. Simple instructions, right? But as they're running, Lot's wife looks back, and boom, she's instantly turned into a pillar of salt. Now this story has sparked so many interpretations over the years. Some people see it as a lesson about obedience. When God says don't look back, you don't look back. Others think it's more symbolic, like maybe her looking back represented her longing for the sinful life she was leaving behind. But let's be real, this whole pillar of salt thing is so extra. Couldn't she just have been scolded or something? Why salt of all things? Some historians think the salt detail might be tied to the region's geography, especially near the Dead Sea, which is full of salt deposits. It's a fascinating mix of literal and metaphorical elements. Number 13, Ezekiel eats a scroll, Ezekiel 3. This next one is just plain weird. In Ezekiel 3, God tells the prophet Ezekiel to eat a scroll. Yes, you heard that right. Eat it. And Ezekiel doesn't even hesitate. He just takes the scroll, full of words of lamentation, mourning, and woe, and eats it. Apparently, it tastes as sweet as honey. Now, this is one of those moments where you have to stop and ask, what is going on here? Most scholars think this is a symbolic act. By eating the scroll, Ezekiel is literally taking in God's words and making them a part of himself. It's a powerful image, but also kind of gross if you think about it too much. I mean, imagine trying to chew on parchment. This story also makes me wonder, if you could eat any book, which one would it be? And would it actually taste sweet like Ezekiel's scroll, or would it taste like old paper? Number 12, the floating axe head, 2 Kings 6. All right, here's a story you probably haven't heard in Sunday school. The floating axe head. In 2 Kings 6, a group of prophets is chopping wood by the Jordan River, and one of them accidentally drops an iron axe head into the water. The guy freaks out because iron was super expensive and hard to replace back then. So what does the prophet Elisha do? He throws a stick into the water, and the axe head miraculously floats to the surface. Now this might seem like a small miracle compared to, say, parting the Red Sea, but it's actually a really personal and practical one. It shows that God cares about the little things in our lives. Like losing a tool? Still, you have to admit, the mental image of an axe head bobbing to the surface is pretty strange. Number 11, the Nephilim, Genesis 6:4. Okay, let's talk about the Nephilim. These mysterious beings are mentioned in Genesis 6:4, and they're described as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. But who were the sons of God? Were they angels, demigods, aliens? Nobody really knows. The Nephilim are often described as giants, and some people think they were the inspiration for myths about gods and heroes in other cultures. Like, were these the original Hercules and Achilles? The Bible doesn't give us much detail, which only makes them more intriguing. It's one of those stories that makes you wish the writers had included a few more footnotes. Number 10, Jonah and the big fish, Jonah 1-2. We all know this one. Jonah gets swallowed by a giant fish and spends 3 days and nights in its belly. But have you ever stopped to think about how bizarre this is? How did Jonah even survive in there? Did the fish just stop digesting for 3 days? And what did Jonah do the whole time? Sing songs, reflect on his life choices? This story is often seen as a metaphor for second chances. Jonah runs away from God's command, but he gets a do-over, albeit in the weirdest way possible. Still, you can't help but wonder what that fish was thinking. Like, great, now I've got this guy sitting in my stomach. Thanks, God. Number 9, the 10 plagues of Egypt, Exodus 7-12. Let's talk about the 10 plagues of Egypt. These were God's way of convincing Pharaoh to let the Israelites go free. You've got water turning to blood, swarms of frogs, locusts, darkness, and more. But let's focus on the frogs for a second. Imagine waking up and finding frogs everywhere. In your bed, in your food, in your shoes. That's not just a plague, that's nightmare fuel. And the best part? Pharaoh's magicians also summon frogs. Like, great job, guys, you just made the problem worse. Number 8, Elisha and the bears, 2 Kings 2. This one is intense. In 2 Kings 2, a group of kids mocks the prophet Elisha, calling him Baldy. Elisha curses them, and 2 bears come out of the woods and attack 42 of them. Let's pause for a second. 42 kids? That's a lot. And all because they made fun of his hair? It's one of those stories that makes you go, wait, what? But some scholars think this story is about respecting God's messengers, not just about bears and baldness. Number 7, the Tower of Babel, Genesis 11. In Genesis 11, humanity decides to build a tower to reach the heavens. God sees this and says, nope, and confuses their languages so they can't understand each other. Imagine waking up one day and suddenly not being able to talk to your friends. It's like the original version of losing Wi-Fi. Number 6, Samson's super strength, Judges 13-16. Let's talk about Samson, the biblical version of a superhero. His story is full of drama, betrayal, and some absolutely wild moments. First, the basics. Samson's strength is legendary. He tears a lion apart with his bare hands, catches 300 foxes, ties their tails together, and sets them loose in a field with torches to burn the Philistines' crops. Oh, and let's not forget when he kills 1,000 men using nothing but the jawbone of a donkey. But here's the kicker. All of Samson's strength comes from his hair. Yep, his long locks are the secret to his superhuman abilities. And that's where Delilah comes in. She tricks Samson into revealing his secret, cuts his hair while he's sleeping, and hands him over to the Philistines. Now, Samson's story is often seen as a warning about temptation and betrayal. But honestly, how did he not see this coming? Delilah asked him 3 times about the source of his strength, and every time he lied, she immediately tried the exact thing he told her. At what point did Samson think, maybe I shouldn't trust this woman? Still, the ending is epic. Even after losing his strength and being blinded, Samson prays to God one last time, regains his power, and brings down an entire building on his enemies. It's a tragic, larger-than-life story, and it shows just how complex biblical heroes can be. Number 4, Jesus curses a fig tree, Mark 11. This one's a head-scratcher. In Mark 11, Jesus is walking with his disciples and sees a fig tree with no fruit on it. Even though it's not the season for figs, Jesus curses the tree, saying, May no one ever eat fruit from you again. The next day, the tree is completely withered. At first glance, this seems uncharacteristically harsh. Like, was Jesus just hungry and frustrated? But many scholars believe this moment is symbolic. The fig tree represents Israel, and its lack of fruit symbolizes spiritual unfaithfulness. Still, it's one of those stories that makes you do a double take. Imagine being one of the disciples, just standing there like, should we do something about this tree? Number 3. Noah's drunken episode, Genesis 9. Most people know the story of Noah and the ark, but what happens after the flood? Well, here's where things get awkward. In Genesis 9, Noah plants a vineyard, makes wine, and gets drunk. He ends up passed out naked in his tent. One of his sons, Ham, sees him and tells his brothers, who cover Noah with a garment without looking. When Noah wakes up and finds out what happened, he curses Ham's son, Canaan. Now, this story is often overlooked, probably because it's so uncomfortable, but it raises some interesting questions. Why was Noah so upset with Ham? And why does Canaan get cursed when he didn't even do anything? Some scholars think this story has deeper cultural or symbolic meanings, but on the surface, it just seems like an embarrassing family drama. Number 2, the resurrection of Eutychus, Acts 20. This one is both hilarious and heartwarming. In Acts 20, the Apostle Paul is preaching in an upper room, and he goes on and on and on. A young man named Eutychus is sitting in a window, and as Paul keeps talking late into the night, Eutychus falls asleep, falls out of the window, and dies. But don't worry, Paul rushes downstairs, embraces him, and brings him back to life. Then Paul immediately goes back to preaching, as if nothing happened. Imagine being Eutychus. You literally die during a sermon, get resurrected, and then have to sit through the rest of it. This story is often seen as a reminder of the power of God and the importance of staying spiritually awake. But let's be real, it's also a cautionary tale about not sitting in windows during long sermons. Number 1, the beasts of Revelation, Revelation 13. And finally, we've reached the strangest of the strange, the beasts of Revelation. The book of Revelation is full of bizarre imagery, but the beasts take the cake. There's a 7-headed beast that rises out of the sea, a dragon, and a second beast that performs miracles and forces people to worship the first beast. Oh, and let's not forget the infamous mark of the beast, the number 666. The symbolism here is off the charts. Most scholars agree that these beasts represent political powers or corrupt systems, but the imagery is so vivid it's hard not to picture it literally. It's like something out of a dystopian novel or a heavy metal album cover. So there you have it, 15 of the strangest parts of the Bible. These stories are weird, wild, and thought-provoking, and they remind us that the Bible is anything but boring. What do you think? Did any of these stories surprise you? Which one is your favorite? Or is there a strange story we missed? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive into biblical oddities, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.